Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the incredible 39-year journey of Martin Luther King Jr. and the truly monumental impact he had on the American civil rights movement. We're going to look at how a young Baptist minister transformed a completely fractured nation all through the unwavering power of nonviolent protest. But we aren't just recounting history here. We're really diving into the mechanics of his movement to understand exactly why his methods for enacting massive social change are still so heavily studied and, honestly, incredibly relevant to us today.
Okay, let's dive right in. Picture this. It's 1956, and King's family home has just been bombed. He steps out onto his splintered porch before an armed, angry crowd, and he delivers this incredibly radical message. We must meet hate with love. Instead of seeking revenge, he claimed he had a spiritual revelation and actually urged his followers to put down their weapons. This single moment perfectly encapsulates the philosophy that would define his entire life.
To cover all of this, here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll hit the making of a leader, the strategy of peace, the Birmingham clash, marches and laws, and finally, the final sacrifice.
All right, part 1, making of a leader, early life and rise. Let's look at the spark that really formed his worldview growing up under the oppressive Jim Crow laws of the American South.
It's actually wild how fast his progression into leadership was. Born Michael King Jr. in a segregated Atlanta back in 1929, he witnessed deep racial injustices early on. But a summer job on a tobacco farm up north gave him a glimpse of what an equal society could look like. Inspired by that and by his father's powerful ministry, King quickly became a highly educated, eloquent academic. He enrolled in Morehouse College at just 15 years old, graduated from Crozer Theological Seminary in 1951, and by 1955 he'd earned his PhD and was pastoring in Montgomery. He was absolutely ready to lead.
Moving right along to part 2, strategy of peace, nonviolent action. As he stepped up, he forged this deeply philosophical approach to the injustices facing his community.
Now, a really crucial point here is that his strategy wasn't passive at all. It relied on civil disobedience, applying peaceful pressure to state systems and enduring abuse without responding in kind. Heavily inspired by the soul force philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, King applied this directly to the South. It took staggering discipline to peacefully defy unjust laws and just absorb the violence, whether from the police or the Ku Klux Klan, without ever retaliating. It was a highly active way to fight an oppressive system.
Just wrap your head around this number, 381 days. That's exactly how long the Montgomery Bus Boycott lasted. It kicked off in December 1955, after Rosa Parks famously refused to give up her seat to a white man. King, who was brand new in Montgomery, was chosen to lead the movement. And despite bombings, relentless police harassment, and constant threats, the protesters held out for over a solid year.
To really grasp the boycott, you've got to look at their goals, which were honestly pretty straightforward. The Montgomery Improvement Association just demanded this: employ black bus drivers, protect black seating, and end the abuse of black passengers. King organized this massive carpool system so they could bypass the buses entirely. And you know what? That incredible discipline worked. It all culminated in a historic 1956 Supreme Court ruling that banned bus segregation nationwide.
All right, part 3, Birmingham clash, Project C. Let's see how this strategy escalated into a massive confrontation in one of America's most rigidly segregated cities.
By 1963, the contrast in Birmingham was just stark. The SCLC was using entirely peaceful tactics: marches, elementary and high school student demonstrations, sit-ins, and singing hymns. But the city's response? Absolutely horrifying. Authorities met these peaceful kids with mass arrests, high-pressure fire hoses, police dogs, and KKK bombings. Seeing those shocking images of brutal state violence used against children just completely horrified the American public, and it literally forced the federal government to finally pay attention. King actually leveraged his own arrest during this campaign to grab the media spotlight, declaring, "I am prepared to go to jail and stay there as long as necessary." While he was sitting in solitary confinement, some white clergymen criticized his protests in the local paper. His response was the legendary Letter from Birmingham City Jail, a 6,500-word absolute masterpiece justifying the civil rights movement and calling for national solidarity. It remains a foundational document to this day. On to Part 4, Marches and Laws, Legislative Victories. The visual momentum from Birmingham completely shifted national opinion, setting the stage for huge legislative wins. Organizers originally hoped for maybe 100,000 attendees for the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. But get this,
An astonishing 250,000 people showed up, gathering peacefully at the Lincoln Memorial. It was this massive, incredibly joyful display of unity that proved the sheer scale of the movement to the entire world. And it was to that massive crowd that he delivered his legendary "I Have a Dream" speech, famously wishing for a world in which people will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. What's amazing is he started out formally reading from his notes, but then pivoted to this beautifully uplifting, informal tone. That single moment cemented his status globally, and shortly after he won the Nobel Peace Prize at just 35 years old.
All that immense pressure from these nonviolent campaigns directly translated into vital legislation. The violence in Birmingham and later St. Augustine pushed Presidents Kennedy and Johnson to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964, effectively banning segregation in public places and work discrimination. But getting a law passed wasn't the end of the fight. The Selma to Montgomery marches aimed to overcome remaining legal barriers, which directly triggered the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Because let's be real, laws on paper don't instantly fix reality. The South had these deeply entrenched barriers to voting, tests totally skewed to benefit white citizens, relocating polling stations miles away from black neighborhoods, and straight-up violent police intimidation. To combat that, King and his allies launched the Selma Marches, enduring tear gas and beatings on Bloody Sunday just to prove that sustained, peaceful pressure was absolutely necessary to enforce those constitutional rights. Which brings us to our final chapter, Part 5, The Final Sacrifice. A legacy continues. Heading into the late 1960s, the movement started to fracture, and King pivoted his focus toward much broader systemic inequalities. Despite rising factions advocating for an armed response, King completely doubled down on nonviolence. He shifted his focus, launching the Poor People's Campaign, aimed at eliminating poverty for people of all colors. This new mission meant getting directly on the ground, which is why he traveled to Memphis in 1968 to support a sanitation workers' strike. On April 3, 1968, he spoke these hauntingly prophetic words to an invigorated crowd. "I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." He spoke so passionately about perseverance and hope, and yet the very next evening, while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, King was tragically assassinated by a sniper named James Earl Ray. He was pronounced dead at just 7:05 p.m. His life was violently cut short at just 39 years old, but his mission didn't die with him. King's legacy as the conscience of his generation led to a national holiday and global recognition of his unyielding commitment to equality. His wife Coretta King and his allies picked right up where he left off, leading marches and ensuring his philosophy would endure. So, what do we actually take away from this profound dedication today? As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to ponder. Looking back at his incredible courage and his unwavering commitment to nonviolent justice, does his vision serve as an invaluable lesson we've successfully adopted, or is his advocacy for a society free from discrimination still very much a distant dream? Thanks so much for joining me, and keep exploring the incredible nuances of history.